No, it'll just it saves as an MP4 in the cloud,
ठीक है
and you can just edit it. Are you guys ready? 3, 2, 3, 2, and 1. Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Chai and Biscuit podcast. We're recording on Monday night here in the US, Tuesday morning in Pakistan, and this is on the first day after the night before the T20 final. With us today are the usual podcast hosts, Spaces King himself, Mr. Yang, Parmeet, and of course, special guest today, Cani. Gentlemen, how are you guys today?
Better than last year, because I have come to the conclusion that a tournament or a World Cup that happens 2 years in a row isn't really that relevant.
Some emotions have been processed. Some will be processed over the next 24 hours. But yeah, it's not a great feeling.
Good to see you guys going through the stages of grief. All right, so first question. Do you guys think best team won?
Yes.
I think best is somewhat subjective when it comes to T20 cricket, but overall, obviously, England has a much more comprehensive side. I just don't think we played anywhere near our strengths, so that didn't help us out. But I think best can kind of vary on the day, and England are a little bit exaggerated, especially for how good they are, like how good their bowling attack is specifically. But
clearly
yeah,
a more deserving champion than last year's.
I would say the more sensible team won. One team clearly.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it. Yeah.
One team clearly came in with a set of plans that they executed. I think the fact is that Pakistani fans know the plans we should choose, but it's mind-boggling that the team management who get paid millions of dollars.
We'll get to the down sides.
No, you'll remember the one team Mr. Yang had said would probably go home as soon as the Super 12s were done. So they clearly outdid themselves.
They did. So coming to that, then let's talk about what are the positives that we should take from a Pakistani cricket perspective, and we'll start off with Yang himself, who predicted a Super 12 exit.
Yeah, a bit. I don't know what to say really, because अगर आप लोगों को पता नहीं, आज आप लोग स्पेस में ख्याल से नहीं थे, so I think that even though Pakistan did well in 2 games, I think the reason why Pakistan reached to the semis was because the other teams didn't do really that well. बाकी जो मेरे ख्याल से, especially South Africa, I think they were atrocious at this event, even after defeating India. And Bangladesh, and as for Pakistan, I think the only positive which I can see is the bowling attack, but I don't think it's really something which was unheard of. I think that सबको ही पता था कि पाकिस्तान की bowling बेहतर है, मतलब one of the best in the tournament है. So in that sense, I don't think there's anything new which we have discovered from this event. But yes, I think I would like to say कि शादाब खान जो है खास उसकी बैटिंग के बारे में I was a bit मतलब कि मुझे इतना लग नहीं रहा था कि he would do that well in Australia, because I thought he would struggle against pace, लेकिन ऐसा हुआ नहीं. तो मेरे ख्याल से उस हिसाब से उसकी बैटिंग as an emergence, as a genuine all-rounder is something which is a huge positive for Pakistan. And of course, Mohammad Haris also scoring quite a good few knocks. तो मेरे ख्याल से उसके बारे में भी आप कह सकते हैं. Other than that, फिर वही आपका आ जाता है कि bowling attack. I don't think that's something which is जिसके बारे में हमें नहीं पता था पहले से. तो I think these two are the positives. इसके अलावा I don't I don't really find anything which is it's been out of the world from Pakistan.
Cani, aapke thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Harris, the knocks were one thing, but just the manner in which he scored his runs was positive because it kind of stepped away from the conventional style of play that we see from most of Pakistan's top order. It almost looked like he was given the freedom to be able to express himself, which is, I think, what we need to see a lot more of in T20 cricket. The bowling attack we already knew going into the tournament was probably amongst the best, if not the best, at the World Cup. So their performance not really a surprise or a positive as such. Like they just came to the party, and I think they performed appropriately. It's unfortunate that the batting kind of handicapped them and didn't give them enough runs to fight for. But from what Yang said, I think that pretty well summed it up. Pakistan's route to the final was obviously helped by other sides not doing as well. But at the end of the day, it's whoever steps up at the semi-final at whichever stage, whatever opportunity is given to them. So you can't really take that away from Pakistan.
Parmeet, anything jo aap add karna chahenge? So we have Haris, we have Shadab as a batting all-rounder, obviously the
I
bowling.
wouldn't point to specific players, but आपने ये देखा कि and this started in the New Zealand series. The tri series with New Zealand and Bangladesh, but carried on here. You saw sort of a desire to be more flexible, even though I think they were being flexible in the wrong way. At least they were being flexible. They sent Nawaz of the order several times. They sent Shadab of the order several times. They moved Shan Masood down when they felt he wasn't needed at the top. They, of course, just bringing in Haris. Performance तो दूर अलग बात है, but like bringing in Haris, so like वो थोड़ी आपने flexibility देखी. फजूल के वो कोई strict नहीं थे, so that was good. Because you need that in T20, right? दूसरी टीम अपने प्लान चेंज करती है, तो आपको भी करने की ज़रूरत है. और आपके प्लेयर्स की अनफॉर्चुनेटली स्पेशली आपके बैट्समैन है, they're very limited in their skill sets. So if as a collective group you want to maximize their output, you actually need to be flexible. Because if you're pretty stringent, then other teams will lock your batsmen down as they have over the course of this tournament. But again, like, that's a good first step that they're being flexible, but of course not in the correct ways yet on some occasions.
And they've had
Secondly,
success with that flexibility. You look at the Super Fours in the Asia Cup against India, for example.
exactly. My more so point is that again, there are certain situations where it's pretty clear that Shadab is a better batsman than Nawaz, and again, certain types of bowling, Shadab is better than Iftikhar. So mistakes are made, but I think at least they've started to think about being flexible, which is good. But of course, they need to incorporate data into that flexibility rather than just go off based on gut instinct.
Sure, so that's
for
a
me,
good. Go
my
ahead.
sort of issue with that, right? For me, what you said, I think it's a positive sign that they're being willing to be flexible. And they were, if you go back to, like you said, Asia Cup, a couple of England games, couple of games in New Zealand, they showed a willingness to be flexible, promoting Shadab, promoting Nawaz. But I just think they appear a little fearful. You sense an apprehension to do it in bigger games. So that's something that वो एक होता है ना जिगरा चाहिए to be able to do this when it matters, right, on the occasion. It's one thing to do it in meaningless bilaterals and just experimenting, but if something's paid off for you, why wouldn't you want to execute it in a final or a semi-final? You know, like in a bigger game, you want to take that risk, and I just don't think they have it in them to take that risk on this kind of a stage. Just to kind of appease people, they'll take those sort of little experiments, they'll do them in bilaterals, but I just would like to see a lot more of it on the bigger stage.
Because I think in their mind, they still treat it as an experiment, whereas the reality is that in T20s, flexibility isn't an experiment. that is, if anything, the usual.
Yeah, because it's
strategy.
something that has paid off for you, right? It's come off in the past. It's
Ah,
not
no,
even like,
exactly. I'm
you
just
know.
saying in their mind, like other teams, like for example, let's take England or other teams, right? When they're being flexible, वो ये नहीं देखते कि यार हम experiment कर रहे हैं. उनके लिए वो इतनी normal चीज़ है, हमारे लिए वो गलत चीज़ है. मैं आपसे agree कर रहा हूँ कि हम वो क्यों फाइनल, जैसे एशिया कप का फाइनल ले लें या अभी का फाइनल ले लें, हम क्यों नहीं वो कर रहे, क्योंकि हमारे माइंड में बैटिंग ऑर्डर चेंज करना इज स्टिल लाइक अ हिटस्टर मूव. इट्स स्टिल नॉट
Still anathema.
यस. और मैं दूसरी बात, बिफोर मूविंग ऑन, दूसरा जो मेरा मेन टेक अवे था कि लास्ट ईयर आई गेस आवर ओपनर्स डिडंट गेट मच ऑफ द फ्लैक इन द सेमीफाइनल. दे इवेंचुअली डिड, बट initially they didn't, because of course you were bowling in the second innings, you were defending a pretty decent, or like numbers wise, a big total, and Shaheen got smacked at the end, Hassan Ali dropped the catch, whatever. But I think in this tournament, Babar and Rizwan have been exposed pretty blatantly multiple times over the course of the tournament. And I think this is it. I would be very surprised if the next time they play a T20, both of them open. And of course, even though we all knew and have known for a long time, this wasn't going to work, or at least I personally have for the past 12 months. I think getting exposed in multiple big games within the span of 3 weeks is a very big deal. And I think this is sort of the nail in the coffin for this opening partnership.
So then let's segue to where it went wrong. Did it go wrong in the power play, whereby even though they were 41 for 1, which was above the average score of 39 for 2 at the MCG, did it go wrong when they brought in Ifti instead of Shada with 5 balls left in the over? Did it go wrong because when Harris came in, his approach was a little bit more confused? Yeah, was it that made it to 120 for 4 after 16 overs, and then instead of sort of counterattacking with singles, doubles, and triples, they began hitting out? And where, or was it a combination of all of the above? What do you guys think?
I think definitely a combination. Like, I hesitate to blame Harris for anything. I know in the final he struggled a little bit because I was deceived time and time again with the slower delivery into the pitch, and he was really trying hard to but you saw a sense of intent from him, right? You saw a sense of at least trying to score briskly. That's saying a lot more than quite a few of our other players. The Shadab Iftikhar point, I think Parmeet already made. That was a massive error. I thought we're just below par for the first 10, but Shan Masood scoring about 16 runs of the 11th over from Livingston had done a great job to kind of swing the momentum back to us.
Correct. And actually, it cost the next 2 overs. You lost the momentum with that change.
Exactly. And that's a lot to do with them deciding to send in Iftikhar ahead of Shadab. Just circling back to the positives you were talking about earlier, I think in a sense, a lot of people were a little deluded to believe that Wasim Jr. could qualify as an all-rounder of sorts.
So we'll come to that. Let's table that for now. I'm going to come to that discussion. Yang, what do you think? Where did it go wrong? Combination? Can you crystallize a point?
यार, in my opinion, मेरे तो ख्याल से I think the start was pretty slow. काफी शुरू में Babar Rizwan, even though I was a bit skeptical कि इनसे वैसे ही कुछ नहीं होना, because the way they had performed in this tournament, काफी इनकी, if you take out the semi-finals innings, they were quite shaky in the whole tournament. तो मेरे ख्याल से उनका पहले से मुझे लग रहा था, but I think after that they did recover well. 10 ओवरों के बाद I think they Shan Masood had a really good over against I think it was Livingston. उसने 16 runs मारे थे. उसके बाद जाके मेरे ख्याल से after 11 overs the score was 84 for 2. 84 for 2. And the way they collapsed, या जो भी, whatever you want to call it, collapse या stale, the way they got stale, या जो भी आपने इसको कहना है, I think that was where they lost the match, and I think they failed to recover after that. And पता नहीं आप लोग मेरे ख्याल से ये बात करते हैं काफी flexible नजर आया कि पाकिस्तान की बैटिंग लाइन है, but if you look at the final, it seems like they were still a bit scared to मतलब के change their batting order, क्योंकि अगर आपको नजर आया कि हारिस जैसी सिचुएशन जाए, there was no need to send हारिस at number 3. उस वक्त आप शान को भेज देते, उधर आप चाहते तो you could have rotated the batting order, लेकिन उन्होंने कहा कि जो जैसे the way it was carded before the match उसी तरह करके उन्होंने किया without taking match situation in account. उनको ये नहीं लग रहा था कि उन्होंने इस तरह करके नहीं किया, फिर उन्होंने इफ्ती को भी जल्दी भेज कर उन्होंने ख्याल से बहुत गलती की थी. they should have sent क्या कहते हैं शादाब over there, or even Nawaz. And after, I think death batting was really pathetic. मतलब कि मेरे ख्याल से they failed to realize after the first match against India कि in MCG you should really not look to play aerial shots. जब तक आप एंड में मतलब कि 1-2 ओवर ना रह जाए. आप अगर देखते तो शादाब ने भी वही गलती की, शान मसूद ने भी वही गलती की, नवाज तो I don't know, he was just a mere spectator after the first game. Like मतलब कि you didn't see him bowl much. Batting भी उसने ख्याल से इतनी ज्यादा नहीं की थी. तो I don't know, I think by the start of the second innings match तो उस वक्त तक खत्म हो गया होता. तो I think it was
so you raise one point you did raise, Parmeet. Let me ask you this. Yeah, you mentioned when Haris came out. When Haris came out and he was batting with Babar after he'd played about 5 or 6 dot balls without scoring. At that point, what's the responsibility on Babar as a senior player, as a captain, to have a chat with him and maybe adjust his approach? Because clearly you could see that he had come in to basically try and hit out and replicate his previous 2 innings. But this was not the circumstances or the ground for that. And so what is that responsibility on Babar? Is there any?
I don't think so, because if you've included a guy in the team, he has a role which is to score quickly as early as possible in the innings, because that's what he's shown he is good at, right? So even if someone has played 5 or 6 dot balls, there's no point of, in my mind at least, asking him to play sensibly, because if you wanted anyone to play sensibly, you would have sent Shan. You wouldn't have sent him anyway, right? Even after he had missed 5 or 6 balls, he was still in the power play. So there is no reason for him to settle down or try to play a different way, because we've seen this with other teams and other openers too. They're trying to smack every ball, they miss 5 or 6, then a few start coming off, and in no time they've gone from a strike rate of 0 to a strike rate of 150 in the span of 5 or 6 balls. So that wasn't a big deal for me. I think maybe if anything, he could have said after the power play, okay, so because Haris isn't great against spin, right? Maybe he could have told him after the power play, because Haris got out on the first ball after the power play, okay, तुम सिंगल ले लो, इसको मैं कोशिश करता हूँ, या यहाँ बाउंड्रियाँ बड़ी हैं तो स्पिनर के ओवरों में डबल निकालते हैं, क्योंकि हम इवन बाबर इज ग्रेट अगेंस्ट लेग स्पिन एनीवेज, तो और पेसर्स पे जो है ना ट्राई करते हैं. बट वहाँ कह सकता था, बट इन द पावर प्ले आई डोंट थिंक देयर वाज एनीथिंग needed to be added, because his role is pretty clear what he needs to do, which I agree with. And if anything, he should be opening, so he has even greater of a chance to make an impact. With that type of an approach, some days things come off, some day they don't. Alex Hales, of course, doesn't have the greatest of techniques. In the last match, he scored 89. And in the final, he was out for 1 of 2 balls. So with that type of an approach, there is a degree of volatility that you can expect in
risk reward. So Cani, let's go to your point then. You brought up Wasim Jr. He came in at number 8. We'd heard that he is that sort of fast bowling all-rounder unicorn that we're looking at. Where should the team go from here to try and find that unicorn? And it's surprising because if you go back in cricket, there used to be a time where fast-bowling all-rounders were common. Imran Khan played at the same time as Kapil Dev and Richard Hadley and Ian Botham. But now it seems that they're sort of not really in vogue. Do we try and is it something Wasim Jr. has to develop through the PSL? Should there be somebody else? Should we tweak his role so that he doesn't have that added pressure? Should Shaheen be the person to try and develop into that batter? I think ideally you'd like somebody like Pandya, who comes in, I think, 5 or 6, right, for India. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Pandya is a very rare commodity, so I think we're very far off. I think if you were to look at Pakistan's domestic circuit for that kind of all-rounder spot, there's 5 names that will be floated right now: Fahim Ashraf, Amir Yameen, Ahmad Butt, Amir Jamal, and then Mohammad Wasim Jr. And each one of those has one sort of what I personally think of as a major drawback that will prevent them from performing at the international stage consistently in that all-rounder spot, as opposed to how they'd be able to do it in the domestic circuit, just because of the gulf in quality between the two. The problem with Wasim Jr. is he was blooded in as an all-rounder purely based on potential. Right. If you look at statistically, there's very little to back his performances that would qualify him as an all-rounder. Sure, in the Pakistan Cup, he had one promising innings, 40-50 odd. In the KPL, he had a cameo. I think he played a couple of scoops, one shot over mid-wicket. In the PSL, he's played a couple of flashy shots here and there, but no conclusive, consistent evidence of somebody who can qualify as a number 8 or should be playing as an all-rounder at a stage like the World Cup, right? So that's my problem. And I think Wasim Jr. in a sense is a bit of a repeat offender. Even the Zimbabwe game, I personally hold Wasim Jr. accountable for his batting disaster a lot more than anybody else in that game. He ended up with 12 of 13. He used up 7 dot balls between the overs of 16 and 20. And I think playing 7 of dot balls in the last 4 overs is borderline criminal, right? That's just not acceptable. Yesterday, he ended up with 4 of 8. And of that 4, 3 came off a random, generous sort of overthrow that Jordan was kind enough to give him, that you'll remember past mid-on. And even yesterday, he ended up eating up like 6 dot balls, right? Which in the last 3 overs, I think if you go back to the 16th over, you're 120 for 4. You're thinking, okay, just get me to a par score, something like 155, 150, 155, anywhere really between 150 and 60. That's somewhat of a par score, right? That tells your bowling, okay, now we've done just enough. We've given you something to bowl with, right? Because 137 is frankly, it's handicapping your own bowling attack. And even with that, they made a more than decent fight, right? But there's no way on God's green earth that you deserve to win a T20 final in those conditions with a 137 score, right? So
I think that was a disappointing thing. Despite all the issues in the innings, they still got it to the 16th over at 120 for 4. And at that point, you almost backed them to get to that 155, 160 range.
Oh, absolutely. And had it not been for, I guess on the spot, sometimes you have to reassess, right? At a certain point, you might think, okay, I want to go at 12 and over for the last 4. I want to end up at somewhere between 165 and 170. But maybe a point comes, you lose a couple of wickets, that you have to reassess on the spot and say, maybe 155 is enough here. Maybe we can kind of curtail that by 10 runs. I just don't think they show the kind of aptitude to make those decisions on the spot, right? It's just whatever is sort of pre-calculated, and they go gung-ho trying to achieve that. And because of that, wickets girti and jaldi, and then you fold for something like a 130, 135.
Then it just becomes a parade. So Yang,
Exactly.
Let me ask you this then. Cani mentioned these 4 or 5 names. How would you go about the approach to try and develop that person over the next 2 years so you have that position there for the 2024? Maybe you don't have a Pandya level, but maybe you have a Poundland version of him. Yang, you, and then Parmeet, how would you guys go about trying to develop that or create that position?
यार मेरे तो ख्याल से क्या नाम है वसीम जूनियर को एज एन ऑलराउंडर कंसिडर करना ही एक बहुत ही बड़ा मेरे ख्याल से is an insult to the world all-rounder. मतलब कि यार इतना मतलब कि I don't think I've seen such an average batsman batting at number 8 for any team. Like also maybe you could make a case for Rabada batting at number Maharaj, लेकिन even मेरे ख्याल से वो भी इससे बेहतर है. तो मुझे समझ नहीं आता कि it's not the first time that he's done something like that. Like his Zimbabwe वाला match को जैसे मेरे ख्याल से he was the main culprit of that match as well, जैसे like Cani said. और मेरे ख्याल से कि ये और उससे पहले अगर आप पीएसएल में देखते तो पीएसएल में भी उसने यही हरकतें की थी. वो पीएसएल का जो प्ले ऑफ था वर्सेस लाहौर कलंदर्स, तब भी अपने आप को ओवर एस्टिमेट करके उसने एक काफी एवरेज किस्म की इनिंग्स खेली थी और which ended up costing Islamabad United the place in final. मेरे ख्याल से आई थिंक आमिर जमाल इनमें से एक है जो I really like. मेरे ख्याल से उसको he performed
Do you
well
think
in
he's a good enough bowler?
He might not be good enough bowler, मतलब if you compare him to the other bowlers of Pakistan, जो main bowlers हैं, but I think he's still क्या कहते हैं very decent. मतलब कि आप if he was playing like if you look at the performances of bowlers in this World Cup, I think वो क्या कहते हैं अगर सैम करन का भी देखें he's not that express and he ended up becoming the player of the tournament. और बाकी bowlers को देखें I think he actually bowls at like 135 to 140. So I don't think he's that bad.
Parmeet, what are your thoughts?
हाँ, आमिर यमीन तो मुझे नहीं लगता क्योंकि काम का है 2022 में.
नहीं, आमिर जमाल की बात कर रहा हूँ.
ओ अच्छा. Amir Jamal, I haven't seen enough of him to say much. The little we did see during that series, I've seen him a little in domestic actually as a batsman, but like go with PSL domestic, like national T20 Cup level. So I guess once we play, if he plays in the PSL and he has enough games for people to see him, then I can sort of form an opinion on him. Wasim Jr., from what I've seen, he just needs to develop more. I think he's nowhere near being called an all-rounder. Hassan Ali was a much better batsman than him, and so far, if anything, Shaheen, Haris Rauf, Hasnain, Dhani, Naseem Shah, they've all played better than Wasim in the past 3-4 months and whatever chances they've got with the bat. So Wasim is far from being an all-rounder in my mind, and I don't think that like even if you compare him with Shaheen clearly looks a more competent batsman. Even Naseem looks a more competent batsman than Wasim.
So is that what you would do? Is try and focus on those two to improve their batting and become that person?
No, not.
Do we need one? Do we need somebody like
so
that in the team to create a balance?
Good question. So I don't think in Asia you do, because let's say if you're playing a World Cup in Asia, I think having so in this tournament you had your 8 to 11 over per. Yeah, so if you're playing any event a 50 or 20 over in Asia, I think you don't need a fourth pacer. Your sixth bowler can be someone like Iftikhar or Khusdal, depending on who's on the team, so you're fine there. Of course, in overseas conditions, you do need someone, and for that you can, for white ball, you can groom Amir Jamal, especially for 20 overs. For 50 overs, maybe even Fahim Ashraf might work. Again, on Fahim Ashraf, I don't know how he has bowled in 20 or 50 overs recently, so I can't definitively say if he would be able to perform those roles adequately because his batting, because of course if he's going to bat low down order, and Fahim Ashraf is more so of an accumulator and someone who can play more balls rather than score at a high click. So I don't have an answer, but I think the upcoming PSL, if these two names, Fahim Ashraf and Ahmed Jawal and even Wasim Jr., I guess, once the three of them play in a tournament together, and if they get enough opportunities with both ball and bat, we'll have a better answer, hopefully, in 6 months' time, heading into the 50-over World Cup.
So to be determined. So let's switch tracks and let's discuss Babar as a captain. So clearly, so two-part question. First, how would you guys, and we'll go, you can start with Cani, but I'd like all of you to answer. How would you rate, remove the batting from this, how would you rate his captaincy for the tournament? Two, clearly we saw that he relies on Rizwan and Shadab to make decisions, whether they're data-driven or whether they're by gut instinct. If he is to be changed as a captain, will that change make a difference, knowing that basically he's still relying on Rizwan and Shadab and it's the same sort of brains? Or is the captain less important than changing the support system? And then the next question is, can he, if they do change that support system, can he be the one to lead a more data-driven approach? And is he somebody who will, like Sarfraz, sacrifice his position as an opener for the betterment of the team? Because as you guys have mentioned many times in spaces, batting in the power play, opening is the easiest position actually from 1 to 10. Is he someone who will sacrifice for the team and drop down? What are your thoughts on Babar? How would you rate him? Go ahead. Let's start with Cani on this.
Just to tackle the last bit first, him sacrificing himself. As far as T20 cricket is concerned, I think he's been very clear. And you said quite rightly.
Let's focus on T20 here, not the ODI.
Yeah, so it's in a sense you're right, that it is the easiest sort of position to bat because you get the luxury of the power play. And I think Babar ka, in a sense, fear factor ye hai ke because he is in a sense a bit of a slow starter, so usko thoda sa time lagta hai to get in and kind of build his strike rate, build an innings. I think he's just fearful if he comes after the power play. A lot of his quote unquote high valued shots जो वो gaps plug करके 2-4 boundaries निकाल लेता है, that keep his strike rate on a good day somewhere between 125 and 130. That's going to be lowered to just somewhere probably hovering just over 100, yeah, just under 100. And that will make Babar look like a very different batsman than he is right now. I just don't think these things apply to ODI cricket at all, but specifically T20 cricket, Babar seems very hesitant to surrender or compromise on his position, which is a little unfortunate. I think एक थोड़ा inspiring decision होता है if the captain sort of acknowledged कि यार power play को हमने maximize करना है. अगर हमारा power score 40 होता है तो हम कोशिश करके उसको 55 की तरफ लेके जाएं, 60 की तरफ लेके जाएं. Let's put the opposition on the back foot, right? और आपको फिर confidence आता है कि अगर ऊपर से wicket गिर भी गई तो you have your best batsman in the 11 at coming in at 3 और वो नीचे से संभाल लेगा. Like he has so much experience, but I just think Babar's too fearful, if that's the right word, to make those decisions. दूसरा जो पहला वाला आपका सवाल था on the think tank and a data-driven approach, I don't see a drastic difference coming in from day one, even if they are to change the captaincy, just because of the sort of model that they've created and the kind of formula that they're using. I think it has to be the whole sort of think tank, right? Jo model that they're playing with has to change, and that'll come with the coaching staff changing. And in a perfect world, maybe somebody like Shadab, who talks a lot more about being aggressive, playing with intent, would be a good leader. But even if Shadab was to come in right now, I don't expect to see any drastic changes on day one.
Yang?
Yeah, as a captain, I think as a captain alone, मेरे ख्याल से I think it was pretty much standard. Just something which you expect from him. He's not a. I don't rate him as a captain. मेरे ख्याल से he's a very average captain. So I think there wasn't anything out of ordinary which we saw in this World Cup. मेरे ख्याल से काफी उसने average किस्म की captaincy की है. Even though I could be wrong, but I think अगर आप जिम्बाब्वे वाला मैच भी देखते, नहीं सॉरी जिम्बाब्वे वाला नहीं, क्या कहते हैं अभी वाला जो आप जिम्बाब्वे वाला मैच, हाँ जिम्बाब्वे वाला मैच आप देखते तो उसके अंदर they were 95 for 7, right? And they ended up scoring 130 for 8 at the end. तो उसके भी फिर काफी like he let them, मतलब कि he didn't go with the attack straight away जब once they were under the, मतलब कि जब वो under pressure थे, he should have tried to get them out for under like 100 या at least 110, लेकिन वो नहीं किया. Same thing happened in the final. मतलब कि अभी I don't know why didn't he, मतलब कि जब उसको पता चल रहा था कि हारिस राउफ took 2 wickets in the power play, he should have just bowled him out in the first 10 overs. उसको भी और शाहीन को भी करवा देते यार. Like मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा, there was no chance that Pakistan was going to defend this total in terms of मतलब कि with England having wickets in hand. The only way to win this match when you put something like 135 on the board, तो यही एक तरीका that you needed wickets, and he basically allowed them to come back in the match through his, I think, very जो उसने सही तरह utilize नहीं किया जो start था, even though I think the match was already over by then. लेकिन अगर थोड़ा और ज़्यादा pressure में डालता तो maybe the result could have been different. And of course, talking about his captaincy, तो जो first debacle in the first match, मतलब कि उसने जो नवाज को, I'm pretty sure it came from him या पता नहीं किसी और ने कहा होगा, लेकिन the captain should be, मतलब कि he's the top authority, तो उसको पता होना चाहिए क्या एक बंदा है who can मतलब कि who is a spinner, he can, why are you asking him to bowl क्या कहते हैं seam up deliveries जब उसके वो एक मेन उसकी चीज है ही नहीं, वो करवाता ही नहीं. उसके वजह से उसने बीच में नो बॉल फुल टॉस भी करवा दी, फिर वाइड्स भी उसने 2-3 फेंक दिया. वो अगर नवाज अगर वही रखता अपना क्या कहते हैं जो उसका था, अगर वो ऑफ स्पिनर ही रहता तो we have seen him defend some totals and like low totals in final overs in PSL. तो हो सकता है बाउंड्री थोड़ी लंबी थी, इवन दो उसने छक्के खाए थे, तो उसको चाहिए था कि किसी तरह करके ये क्या कहते हैं कि वो उसको कहता कि स्पिनर उसको एज अ बैक करना चाहिए. तो उसकी वजह से मेरे ख्याल से उसकी वजह से काफी, अगर आप नवाज को बाद में टूर्नामेंट में देखे तो ही लुक्ड ऑफ कलर, और तो कि उसने ज्यादा बॉलिंग भी नहीं करवाई, बैटिंग में ख्याल से साउथ अफ्रीका के मैच में.
So yeah,
उसने
you
जरा
bring up an interesting point. कि would a bowling captain be a better fit for this team, considering that your strengths are in bowling? Would a bowler as a captain have made those changes जो आप suggest कर रहे हैं, bowling out Harris, maybe changing the way Nawaz bowled that final over?
या अब आप ज्यादा, मुझे नहीं पता आप क्या इसके बारे में कह सकते हो, क्योंकि अब I don't know if you consider Shadab Khan as a bowling captain, because in my opinion he's an all-rounder. लेकिन
Or Shaheen, he's LQ captain.
शाहीन का जो मैंने जो चीज नोटिस किया in PSL, he had a lot of good brains. उसके पास हफीज था, फिर उसके पास क्या कहते हैं राशिद खान भी था. ये 2 प्लेयर्स काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है. फिर वीजे भी था, वो भी काफी हेल्प कर रहा था उसको. अब पाकिस्तान की टीम में आई डोंट थिंक देयर इज, मतलब कितने ज्यादा एक रिजवान को निकाल के और शादाब को निकाल के आई डोंट थिंक देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ गुड ब्रेन्स इन पाकिस्तान टीम जो ऐसी चीज को बंदा कोई ज्यादा एनालिटिकल, कोई वो क्या कहते हैं कोई ज्यादा उस तरह करके कुछ कर सकता था. तो मेरे ख्याल से शाहीन को मतलब कि मुझे नहीं लगता कि he will do any better as a captain for Pakistan. तो मेरे ख्याल से शादाब ही अभी तो लग रहा है यार maybe you could go to Rizwan seeing his record at PSL. लेकिन कोई फिर मसला यही आ जाता है कि बाबर और रिजवान, तो मेरे ख्याल से इन दोनों को तो T20 टीम में होना ही नहीं चाहिए. तो कैप्टन के इनको बना के
Chilling.
नहीं, लेकिन
Parmeet,
यार
your
क्या
thoughts? Go ahead.
what conclusive evidence do we have कि if you go to Rizwan की कोई improvement आएगी? Like what are we basing that on?
या उसका मैं यही कह रहा हूँ, उसका यही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ his सक्सेस इन PSL, मतलब कि 9 आउट ऑफ 10 मैचेस एंड में कल सिर्फ 2 मैचेस ही आ रही थी और उससे पहले वो उसके अंदर भी जीत गए थे. एंड देन इफ यू लुक एट हिज रिकॉर्ड इन डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट तो वो काफी अच्छा है. एंड इफ यू कंपेयर इट विद बाबर आजम was a flop as a captain even at underage नहीं, sorry,
हाँ, लेकिन
at
फिर वो
age
कानी वाली बात आ जाती है ना. His structure at Multan with Flower and with Haider Azhar and with Abdurrahman as
नहीं,
a coach is very
वो
different
चीजें
than.
वो लोग जो आप बात कर रहे हैं वो तो मुल्तान सुल्तान्स में है ना, लेकिन उसने तो पेशावर के साथ KPK के साथ भी काफी इनको जितवाए हुए हैं मैच, ट्रॉफीज वगैरह काफी. और बाबर आजम एक ऐसा कैप्टन है who I don't think he has won anything as a captain in his career. तो वो आप उस हिसाब से आप देख सकते हैं कि उस हिसाब से एक से बेहतर हो सकता है. लेकिन once again I'm not really sure कि इससे, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल से रिजवान.
अच्छा, I have a quick question on this, right? अब बाबर आउट हुआ, हम जो इफ्तिखार और शदाब के एंट्री पॉइंट की परमीत बात कर रहा था, बाबर just got out and इफ्तिखार walked in right away. So are we saying that was a pre-carded decision? Are we saying that's a decision that Babar made on his way out, or are we saying that's a decision that the team management made कि अगर जो भी आउट होगा इफ्तिखार जाएगा? Because that says a lot about your leadership structure, right? कि in the moment कौन decisions ले रहा है?
And that's the essence for why I asked this question. If you just change the captain to Rizwan Shadab, will it truly make a difference, or do you really have to change the entire think tank and support structure behind him?
या मैंने ये बात कही थी ना कि आप लोग के कुछ कह रहे थे कि फ्लेक्सिबल बैटिंग अप्रोच है. हाँ, वो बाकी मैचेस में तो थी, लेकिन फाइनल में आप देखें तो जो आप ICC का जो मतलब कि जो ब्रॉडकास्टर्स का जो ग्राफिक्स होते हैं उसके जब दिखाते प्लेइंग लाइनअप, उसके जैसा ऑर्डर था वही रहा है. उन्होंने कोई चेंज करने की कोशिश नहीं की, बल्कि देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ रूम फॉर रोटेशन ऑफ द बैटिंग ऑर्डर, लेकिन उन्होंने बिल्कुल भी नहीं किया. तो वही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि अब मुझे ये नहीं पता. आई थिंक आई वुड प्रॉब्ली, मुझे लगता है कि ये बाबर नहीं कहा होगा या सकलैन मुश्ताक नहीं कहा होगा कि यहाँ पे ऐसे जो जा रहा है वैसे ही जाने दें, कुछ नहीं होता. उसने उसको भी छक्के मार दिए थे अक्षर पटेल को. उनके अक्षर पटेल आई थिंक इज अ कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट बॉलर फ्रॉम आदिल राशिद. और क्या कहते हैं, वैसे भी इसको स्पिनर्स एक इस मतलब कि वर्ल्ड कप को निकाल के, वो मैच निकाल के, ही इज बीन रियली पुअर अगेंस्ट स्पिन. इफ्तिखार अहमद, he doesn't even have a good record against spin. तो मुझे नहीं लगता, मुझे नहीं समझ आ रही कि किसने इनको ये आइडिया दिया था, और इवन हारिस वाला किसने आइडिया दिया था कि उसको नंबर 1 डाउन
For
करना.
me, let's bring you into the conversation. What are your thoughts on this?
I think captaincy wise, bowling changes mostly they were good, so I wouldn't criticize that too much. On the batting though, again, like where he's sending people, I don't think again he is utilizing data in that, which like I know people don't like it and whatnot, but like if the entire world is using data and their decision making is driven by that, then you also have to do it, and like that's the sensible thing to do. The entire world runs on numbers, so like it doesn't make sense that they don't. उसमें ये भी आता है ना कि आपकी कोचिंग स्टाफ किस टाइप की है. If you have a person with you as the coach who thinks in line with you and he's not there to counterbalance any your views, then it's not going to improve, right? Then you need a change in captain. But if you do get a coach that is going to challenge you, maybe you can keep Babar. The realistic
So
thing,
what would you do?
what would I do? Or what is realistic is that they're not going to, regardless of who the coach they get after he leaves, one, they don't have the money. Two, Ramiz clearly doesn't believe in coaches for some odd reason, which is why I don't think they're going to get some superstar a coach. In which scenario, what's probably better is to change the captain to Shadab, who has shown in his time as Islamabad United captain that he's willing to adopt the modern day approach and process for decision making. So I would do that. Rizwan, and like I know you were asking about the bowling captain and stuff. I don't think having fast bowlers as captains is feasible, given they're more injured. They're often rested a lot more than others, and in that scenario, of course, you would need someone else to step in a country like Pakistan, where everyone, especially cricketers, are insecure most of the time. I don't think that would be a good decision. So I would I would make Shadab captain, but Babar would be an okay captain, not good captain, okay captain if he had a coach that would keep him in check. But that's not going to happen.
Any last thoughts on
Sadi bhai,
captaincy, Cani? Go ahead.
Sorry, एक चीज real quick. I know you wanted to keep the batsmen separate, right? You said just comment on the captaincy. मुझे उसमें एक वो double-edged sword
No,
इसलिए
I think
लगती है.
it's you.
Yeah.
I don't think you can separate the two. I think you have to because वही बात हो जाती है ना. Will he? Is he going to sacrifice his position, etc.
नहीं
Which
position,
you've been
and
spending.
that's an argument as well, लेकिन वो थोड़ा different है. What I'm trying to say is कि एक captain का ना एक वो leading from the front वाला जो feel आता है ना, कि like you basically with your own performances you need to be inspiring the team. And to be fair to Babar, we don't want to sound too harsh, but over the last 2 years he's been relatively extraordinary with his performances in bilaterals, right? In series, and he has been one of the top batsmen. मतलब the rankings say so themselves. वो सारी चीजें valid हैं. But I feel like एक वो turncoat moment आता है ना आपके career में in a big tournament, the World Cup, in these kind of conditions where you know कि आपका middle order बहुत ही fragile है. Everybody is reliant on you. कि भाई आप technically probably पाकिस्तान के best batsman हो. You will come through. And for Babar, मतलब I'm not saying कि आप हर मैच में man of the match बन जाओ या top performer हो.
No,
But
you're right. He
the
has
bare,
not been clutch. You're right. Go
bare
on.
minimum होता है ना कि you expect कि your captain will be at least amongst your top 3 or top 4 performers. And sad to say, Babar just hasn't come through on that end.
I think
No, I think that's very fair.
in my opinion, I think Babar is one of the flops of the tournament.
We'll come to that. Oh, okay, so let me ask you guys now the next question. So if you look at the last 2 years through a prism, so you combine last year's World Cup and this year's World Cup, how much of a lost opportunity is this? Do you view this as the end of a cycle for this particular team, or will they continue down the same sort of core group of 12 to 15 players as they plan for 2024, given that the average age of the team is still only in their 20s? How would you approach the next 2 years, and then where do you think the reality is going to be? So one is what you would do, two is what you think will happen, and then how do you gauge the last 2 World Cups and the lack of a trophy?
Last year the chance अच्छा था. This year I think getting to the finals we exceeded expectations, of course. Now that's not all down to us, of course. Other teams also.
You predicted they would win.
नहीं वो तो seriously नहीं ना. वो तो ऐसे मतलब बंदा वो optimism में बोलता है, but like realistically a T20 World Cup in Australia with 5 or 4 of your top 6 batsmen clearly not being able to score a run in the 7-match series prior to the World Cup, then there is no way you're going to win. So basically, यहाँ तो आपने overachieve कर लिया last year. Okay, you probably should have won. Next 2 years though, I don't think anything will change much in terms of the personnel, because I don't think there's an issue with the personnel too much. I don't like Rizwan. I don't personally think he should be in the T20 team. Maybe you might, if Babar continues like this and he's still striking at 115, 120, and you somehow find someone else in the PSL, even his time, and not now, not anytime soon, but maybe in a year, even his place might come under question, right? But apart from that, I think, except again one or two other people, I would say यही आपकी team रहेगी, because the 4 or 5 bowlers you have, they're all young, they're all performing. Some batsmen you have, some of your bowlers are also the batsmen, plus you have some new young batsmen. So if anything, you might see one or two major changes in the batting, but otherwise this group will stay the same. Even when you look at your backup, especially in bowling, that's pretty settled. Of course, you can get new batsmen, but like we don't really get new batting talent that often. You just have to make do with the current lot. The biggest change, though, again, like has to be with uh, captaincy. Uh, oh, I also don't know how captaincy appointments are impacted by the government changes, because then if Ramiz Raja goes, someone else comes in, do they appoint a captain? That is totally out of the blue. Someone we're not even considering, someone much older. So we need to think about that. But I think uh, if अगर आप 2 साल बाद वाला वर्ल्ड कप के बारे में सोच रहे हैं, वेस्ट इंडीज एंड द यूएसए pitches are slow, you probably have a good chance there as well. uh, so you should like iron out the mistakes in your approach, because
So
again,
keep the gang together is what you're
yeah,
thinking.
because I feel like T20 World Cup over time, the more I understand the sport, that in the group stages, right, Pakistan could have been either 5 of 5 victories, or you could have you end up at 3 out of 5, because I think the 3 games we won them comfortably. Yeah. So like the
Cani, your thoughts?
uh,
What I would like to see differently, and this might be a slightly unpopular opinion, but I personally would dearly like to see, because the next World Cup's 2024. I think it's in our best interest if Babar and Rizwan were to focus more on the slightly longer formats. I think ODI cricket is Babar's truest format. He's really come to the fore in Test cricket. I just don't think it makes sense for him to kind of mug about his legacy with T20 cricket, because it's definitely his weakest format, right? It's an area where he has to come out of his comfort zone, and he has done it on and off, but you can clearly tell it's something he's not comfortable with. And not to say that will happen, but just because you asked what I would like to see happening, I think I would, going into 2024, I would really like to see us adopting from the top, right? Like from your how the top order kind of plays itself through the power play. I'd like them to adopt a strategy that is integral to how T20 cricket should be played, right? Whether it's Saim Ayub, whether it's Hassan Nawaz, whoever your promising batsmen are that are coming through the channels, whether it's in the PSL, whether it's in National T20, I'd like to see them given chances. And once, if Shadab is to take the captaincy, I think he's shown enough and he's said enough about how he would want to remodel the way Pakistan play T20 cricket. He's done it for Northern. He's done it in a sense for Islamabad United with mixed results. But there's a lot that goes on in the background with injuries. There are uncontrollables that he can't really kind of sustain what he wants to do there for one reason or another. I just think there's enough promise on offer to say that if you were to give him the reins, you could see Pakistan playing a more free-spirited style of T20 cricket, right? And I think
You bring up a very interesting thing. So if Babar has a mediocre PSL for Zalmi, that'll be back-to-back mediocre seasons. Do the drumbeats get louder for him to relinquish his position, not just as captain, but also within the T20 squad? Or do you think that is something that you just cannot see happen?
Sadi bhai, personally speaking, I genuinely hope Babar does it voluntarily, right? Like, I hate to see people being forced out, especially somebody like Babar, who, if you put his sort of hesitancy or reluctance to sacrifice his position in the batting order, generally Babar's operated with a certain level of integrity. He's operated with a certain level of grace. And there are obviously certain valid reservations about how he his own style of play, the way he approaches a T20 game, the way he approaches an innings, the way he approaches a power play, and all of that is valid, right? But I would hate for it to be created by public pressure or him to be forced out of T20 cricket and sacked. And then that just would create, I think, an unnecessary sort of frosty atmosphere. What I'm hoping happens is Babar himself at one point realizes, okay, I think it's time that T20 cricket, I can let the next generation play up. I know I'm very good at two formats. I have a legacy in mind and I want to focus on them. And we've seen players do it in the past, right? But if push comes to shove, sure, like if he's being very hesitant and you have back-to-back underwhelming seasons, like you said, the pressure groups will get louder and they might force him out. But in a perfect world, I'd like for him to voluntarily put his hand up and throw in the white towel or whatever you want to call it and say, you know what, T20 cricket is just not meant for me. I'll play my franchise cricket. But I think I want to accept that Pakistan wants to shift the way they want to play T20 cricket, and I'm not a natural fit in it. And there's nothing wrong in that. I might
No,
just
absolutely.
be,
It's very fair.
yeah, and
Yang?
I might be a world-class batsman, but this is not for me anymore. And I hope it comes from within him. That's it.
Yang, your thoughts?
यार इन माय ओपिनियन मेरे तो ख्याल से कि रिजवान और बाबर दोनों को ही नहीं होना चाहिए बाय 2024 एंड T20 साइड, क्योंकि इन माय ओपिनियन बाबर जो प्लेयर है ही इज वेरी सिमिलर टू जो रूट और स्टीव स्मिथ वगैरह इवन इन T20। अगर वो दोनों को उन्होंने क्या कहते हैं किसी तरह स्क्वीज आउट कर दिया अपनी टीम से, उनकी रिस्पेक्टिव टीम में, देन व्हाई इज Babar Azam still playing T20 cricket? As Cani bhai said that he's just hurting his own legacy. जो है ख्याल से he's a great ODI and Test player, लेकिन ODI I think he's like Pakistan's all-time great and even on course to become world's all-time great. लेकिन मेरे ख्याल से T20 में तो उसकी कोई जगह बनती नहीं है, क्योंकि आप देखें ना एक ये है कि कोई लोग कह रहे हैं कि यार आप उसको वन डाउन भेज दे, लेकिन वन डाउन भेजेगा यार एक प्लेयर जिससे पावर प्ले सही तरह यूटिलाइज नहीं हो रहा, वो वन डाउन आके तो और ज्यादा, अगर पावर ओपनिंग करके अगर उसकी स्ट्राइक रेट 120 है फिर तो उसकी क्या कहते हैं वन डाउन तो फिर उसकी कोई 80-90 की हो जाएगी, वो तो बिल्कुल भी फिर उसका कोई फायदा नहीं। और रिजवान का आई जस्ट डोंट, मेरे ख्याल से उसकी पहले चलो आप इसको ये कह सकते थे कि कोई वो नजर नहीं आ रहा, कोई विकेट कीपर नजर नहीं आ रहा, लेकिन बट व्हेन यू हैव हारिस तो मुझे नहीं समझ आता कि क्यों आप उसके साथ अभी भी आप उसके साथ कंटिन्यू, हाँ आप खिला सकते हैं उसको, लेकिन आई डोंट थिंक ही उसको भी मेरे ख्याल से नहीं होना चाहिए। एज फॉर बाकी प्लेयर्स आई थिंक क्या कहते हैं प्लेयर्स लाइक आसिफ, खुशदिल, इनको तो मेरे ख्याल से अगले T20 वर्ल्ड कप को ज़हन में रखते हुए इन दोनों को तो निकाल देना चाहिए।
नहीं तो आपने बोला आसिफ, खुशदिल, हैदर, हारिस, बाबर, रिजवान सबको निकाल दूं तो खेलेगा कौन?
नहीं मैंने ये नहीं कहा, मैंने कहा इन दोनों को तो डेफिनेटली निकाल देना चाहिए, बाकियों का मुझे लग नहीं रहा कि उनको निकालेंगे, लेकिन इन दोनों को निकालना चाहिए। एंड स्लाइटली अनपॉपुलर ओपिनियन, मेरे ख्याल से इफ्तिखार अहमद को भी अगले वर्ल्ड कप के लिए, क्योंकि ही इज वेरी पुअर अगेंस्ट स्पिनर, और जो क्या कहते हैं वेस्ट इंडीज की जैसी पिचेस ज्यादा स्पिन ही काम आती है ज्यादा। So
and in fairness to Yang, they have replacements. You know, you have Azam in place of Asif, who has had success at the CPL.
He has a really good record in CPL. तो वो आप हो सकता है तब तक कासिम अकरम डेवलप हो जाए, 2 साल हैं, इवन दो दे आर नॉट प्लेइंग अ लॉट ऑफ T20s, लेकिन कोई फिर सायम अयूब वगैरह इतने ज्यादा नाम लिया तो कोई भी मतलब कि उनमें से आके डेवलप हो के, इवन इरफान नियाजी कौन मतलब कि पिछले वो प्लेयर कोई पिछले 10 साल से अंडर 19 ही है, लेकिन फिर भी हो सकता है मे बी आफ्टर 1 ईयर वो भी हो सकता है कोई डेवलप कर ले अपने आप को एज अ गुड फिनिशर इस तरह करके।
Do you guys think that 2 years is enough to make such more than what you are suggesting, tweaks. You're not suggesting tweaks. You're suggesting more radical changes. Do you think 2
मुझे
years is
पता
enough to do that?
तो आप देखें, आप अगर if you're being serious, you need a radical change because आप 3 आप हारे, चलो इसके तो कोई बिल्कुल भी कोई आपके कोई expectations ही नहीं थी तो आपने ओवर अचीव किया ना इधर इस वर्ल्ड कप में through some luck and through the help of other teams, especially my favorite team Netherlands. लेकिन आप क्या कहते हैं बाकी आप देख रहे हैं पिछले साल का एशिया कप, ये तो आपको जीतना चाहिए था ना, वो तो उसमें जो गलतियां की थी वही आपने इधर भी वर्ल्ड कप में भी वही सिमिलर आपने गलतियां की हैं। और जैसा मुझे नहीं लग रहा कि इन्होंने कोई ज्यादा इनका कोई चेंज करने का, मुझे नहीं लग रहा है इनका कोई प्लान लग रहा है जैसा हमने नोटिस किया है प्रेस रिएक्शन और प्रेस पे जैसे इनका रिस्पॉन्स हुआ, मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो ज्यादा करेंगे। मुझे तो लग रहा है कि सेम ही टीम खेलेगी 2024 में अगर इनके बस में हुआ तो। even though they should make a lot of changes because अगर आपको याद हो 2017 का चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी पाकिस्तान जीत गई थी, लेकिन फिर भी उन्होंने अजहर अली को फारिग कर दिया था टीम से, उसके इमामुल हक को ले आए थे। अब बाकी मेरे ख्याल से और भी उन्होंने 2-3 चेंजेस की थी, शाहीन अफरीदी को भी ले आए थे वो लोग, वरना अगर वही होता था 1 साल बाद आपको लोग कहते यार कि क्यों अभी क्या जरूरत, अभी पिछले साल तो जीते, लेकिन दे ब्रॉट इन शाहीन शाह अफरीदी, इवन उस्मान शनवारी को यार वो वापस लेकर आए थे। उसका अगर आप लोग को याद हो तो पहली इसकी सीरीज काफी अच्छी गई थी एंड ही वाज क्वाइट डिसेंट इन ओडीआई क्रिकेट। तो उन्होंने इतनी अगर तब चेंजेस कर ली थी बिटवीन 2017 वर्ल्ड चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी एंड 2019 वर्ल्ड कप, मेरे ख्याल से अभी भी देयर इज इनफ टाइम दैट they should look to make changes in the squad.
Anything to add, Cani, Parmeet?
नहीं, मैं बस बोलूंगा कि आई एक्चुअली ये T20 वर्ल्ड कप की और आईसीसी इवेंट्स इन जनरल, आई थिंक अंटिल जब तक भी 28-29 तक जब भी स्केड्यूल आया हुआ है, देयर इज एन आईसीसी इवेंट एवरी ईयर. So in search of revenue, I think they're devaluing this, and I think this will lead, I don't know, these events not being as big of a success as they
It may
used.
not be, but the fans still cherish them. I mean, we haven't won since 2009, so.
Yeah,
हाँ,
Sadi
नहीं,
bhai, 2017 Champions Trophy we did win, to be fair.
Sorry, 27 champion. I always forget a
Right.
Champions Trophy because it
Just
doesn't say
based
World
on
Cup.
जो Parmeet कह रहा है ना, from the viewership aspect and the overkill aspect, I get that. But वो जो हम इस generation की बात कर रहे हैं ना कि they desperately need to win a trophy because आपकी legacy ही apparently trophy से आती है. Nobody will remember 10 years down the line कि एक कोई बहुत ही incredibly talented team थी if you have nothing to show for it. This is a very valid thing that Parmeet said. इस year आपका World Cup हुआ, T20 World Cup, you came to the final, you blew it, it is what it is. 2023 you have a 50-year-old World Cup, 50 over World Cup. 2024 you have another T20 World Cup in the Caribbean and the US, and then 2025 you have the Champions Trophy, probably to happen in Pakistan. So in back-to-back 3 years में 3 trophies के आपके पास opportunity आएगी, और अगर ये टीम जिसका core more or less same रहेगा, average age is what 24-25, ये तब तक जाके अपनी peaks hit कर रहे होंगे. ठीक है, कुछ इनके रैंडम्स, इफ्तिखार मे बी 45 at that one point उसको निकाल देंगे, मतलब a few people will have to be moved on, that's just the way of the world, but general जो आपकी core है वो more or less will stay the same. So you expect कि at least one of those trophies this team has to win for their legacy, right? वरना they will go down as the मतलब I don't want to call them chokers in any sense, but that आपका एक trend बन जाएगा ना कि you're constantly like getting to the final stage and ending up like in New Zealand.
Bridesmaids.
Essentially.
No, that's very valid.
मेरा एक मिस्टर परमीत से एक है, ये जो कह रहे हैं कि हर साल हो रही है, लेकिन आप अगर कब से 2006 से अगर आप देख लें तो तब भी तो हर साल ही कोई ना कोई आईसीसी इवेंट होता है।
नहीं, हर साल
कहाँ पे मुझे एक चीज बताओ ना।
एक्चुअली नहीं, आप सही बोल रहे हैं, आप सही बोल रहे हैं, कुछ
2016 और 20 के बीच में कोई T20 वर्ल्ड कप नहीं हुआ, if I remember correctly.
लेकिन वो तो इसलिए हुआ था ना क्योंकि बीच में मतलब कि 2020 में तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली कोविड आ गया था, वरना अगर आपको ये याद हो तो उसके अंदर भी इनका जो मैंने आईसीसी का देखा, they wanted to hold an event in 2018, but due to I think it was something South African government ने ban किया था cricket South Africa को from hosting any events, so that was the reason why they couldn't host it in 2018. But अगर उसको निकाल दे तो 2018 को निकाल दे, there was an event in 2016, then 2017, फिर 2018 को निकाल के फिर 2019 से फिर 2021 2022, मतलब कि तब भी consistently आपके इवेंट्स हर साल होते रहते हैं आईसीसी कोई ना कोई.
Lots of opportunities, but as we've all seen, it's very easy to get almost to the peak of the mountain. It's very different to actually take that final step and conquer.
Sadi bhai, the psychological aspect doesn't get talked about for the team itself.
Yes, it's absolutely. You need to win. We saw that with, not to use Man United as an example, but we saw that with Oli, right? Lots of semifinal defeats. It's hard to basically create that winner's mentality and actually get to the mountaintop. You're absolutely right.
नहीं मतलब आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि आप कोई रूथलेस कोई किलर्स बना लें जो मतलब विनिंग बिकम्स अ हैबिट, बट एक आध ट्रॉफी भी हो ना तो एक वो सेल्फ बिलीफ थोड़ी बिल्ड होती है, एक आपको फील होता है कि यार हम भी अपनी कोई लेगेसी बनाने जा रहे हैं. आई जस्ट फील लाइक एक आप जितना भी अपने आप को मोटिवेट कर लें, इफ यू एवरी सिंगल टाइम यू गेट टू द सेमीफाइनल एंड द फाइनल एंड वो सेम आपका मोनोटोनस एक वो आता है कि बस 100% देना है और वो, एंड देन यू जस्ट एट द लास्ट स्टेप you keep falling, तो एक वो I think inner एक वो बन जाता है, there's a burden sort of that starts to build on the players, right? And I don't think that's necessarily something that you can perform at optimal capacity with that sort of burden.
No, you're right. That's what made the Asia Cup so disappointing, because they could have, I think winning that would have provided them with a lot of psychological impetus.
यार ये मैं I wanted to add something on it कि I'm kind of disappointed by the fans reaction, क्योंकि मैं बताता हूँ ना क्यों, because it's very similar to the ones we see from
So that's a good point, Yang. So are the fans wrong when they say that we should be happy that we lost to this England team and we made it to the finals, so on and so forth?
I think हारना पाकिस्तान इंग्लैंड से आना, because they were definitely the deserving winners. और अगर आयरलैंड वाले मैच में बारिश ना होती, there's a high chance, और अगर ऑस्ट्रेलिया में भी नहीं होती, there would have been a high chance that they would have probably won all their games in this T20 World Cup. लेकिन अगर आप ये देखें तो क्या कहते हैं, मैं इसकी बात नहीं कर रहा, मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि आप ये देखें ना कि आप लोग कह रहे हैं कि this was a close match. How was it a close match? मुझे कोई बंदा ये बता दे.
No, I agree. I certainly never felt that we
आप मुझे
were
एक चीज
ever
बता
sort
दीजिए,
of in the driver's seat. You're absolutely right.
if you have seen the interview of Stokes to the Sky after the जब उसने मतलब after the match, तो उसका कहता है कि we never felt under pressure. कहता मैं हमेशा ये लग रहा था कि हम लोग अगर पता क्या उनको 10 ओवर में उनको 61 रन चाहिए थे, तो वो तो अगले 5 ओवर भी मेडन खेले तो फिर भी the score would have still been under their क्या कहते हैं under their reach, उनके होना था, उनके रीच में होना था ना, तो कहाँ से एक क्लोज मैच था. मेरे ख्याल से it was the way people are acting कि जी बहुत हमने कोई पता नहीं 8-9 विकेट ले, वही 5 विकेट ली हैं, कोई इतना कोई मेरे नहीं ख्याल से इतना कोई खुश. हाँ इस बात पे आप कह सकते हैं कि भाई ये आप पहुंच गए फाइनल तक, लेकिन इतना मेरे ख्याल से कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है कि आप बहुत ज्यादा इस पे खुश हो.
नहीं यांग, वो तो यार देखो, we all agree 137 was never going to be enough, right, to make it competitive. बात सारी ये हो रही है कि you saw fight, right, you saw spirit in your bowling attack.
The bowlers showed वो gumption, no question.
Yeah.
वो तो यार अब इतनी मेरे ख्याल से अब जाहिर सी बात है, अब I don't think England would have scored it in, मतलब कि वो ये भी नहीं है कि उन्होंने कोई
मतलब आप बेसिकली को 10 विकेटों से तो नहीं हार गए ना कि उन्हें कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली
10 हारने के लिए आपको बहुत ही आपको मतलब कि फारिक बॉलिंग अटैक होना पड़ेगा. लेकिन मेरे ख्याल से कि वही कि आप फिर ये कहो ना कि या बॉलिंग ने अच्छी की है, लेकिन आप कोई लोग, मैं ये देख रहा हूँ लोग बात ही नहीं कर रहे बैटिंग की, यार कि बैटिंग में इतने लैप्सेस क्यों है, क्या हुआ है, क्यों ये बाबर आजम इतना स्लो खेलता है. ही हैज प्लेड 2 criminal innings in last 2 ICC events. उसके बारे में कोई कुछ बोल ही नहीं रहा. और जी वी आर प्राउड ऑफ दीज बॉयज. यार मतलब कि आप प्राउड तो तब हो गया ना कि जब आप बाकी उसका देखो, तो वो इस पे भी इस पे बात ही नहीं कर रहे. जो मेन आई थिंक द एलिफेंट इन द रूम इज बाबर आजम एंड हिज कैप्टनसी एंड हिज बैटिंग. उसके ऊपर कोई बात ही नहीं कर रहा कोई.
No, we just discussed it quite a bit at specifically his
नहीं,
captaincy.
हमने
तो
किया ना, हमने किया ना, लेकिन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट the reaction in मतलब कि जो general reaction है उसके हिसाब से.
yeah, so we are the voice of the fans. We have to disseminate these thoughts to the fans, and hopefully people listen to this, and then that triggers fans to also start thinking more critically. Actually, Cani has left, but let's wrap this up. Overall grade for the team. Who was your player that overperformed? Who was your player that underperformed?
Overperformed Shadab, because even though he is good, literally performing in every single game is a bit weird, especially in T20 cricket. So clearly overperformed, and clearly underperformed was Babar. I think he ended the tournament with a sub 100 strike rate, I think. Is pretty pathetic.
93.
93. That's pretty pathetic, regardless of any condition, anything. There is no way you are.
And grade
For the team overall?
Yes, for the team as a whole.
7, I'd say.
No, A, B, C, D grades.
Oh, B.
And you can use pluses and minuses.
Yeah, B minus.
Despite making the final and overachieving. Fair enough.
Yeah,
that's why we do this.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Yang. Your over, under, and grade.
किसका पूरे वर्ल्ड कप का या मतलब पूरे anyone
The
from
team,
the World Cup?
for the World Cup,
Pakistan.
the Pakistan's performance at the World Cup. How would you grade it? Who overachieved? Who underperformed?
I think overachieved तो मेरे ख्याल से वही है, क्या कहते हैं, शादाब खान. I think answer is the same, no difference. And underperformed, I think I will give it a joint award to Rizwan and Babar. मेरे ख्याल से दोनों equally deserve करते हैं underperformed और flops of the tournament for Pakistan का, क्योंकि बहुत
Despite the semis.
हाँ मेरे ख्याल से still they deserve the underperformers, मतलब कि वो. And for वो क्या कहता है, I would give it a C for the performance.
Harsh, but you're entitled. I mean, but Yang, you predicted them to go out in the Super 12. Surely that reaching the final gets them above a C.
Yeah, मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि if it wasn't for my favorite team, Netherlands, they wouldn't be in the semi-finals, let alone the finals. तो आप ये भी तो देखें ना कि आपने देखे एक पहला मैच इंडिया वाला आप हार गए, जिम्बाब्वे वाला आपको जीतना चाहिए था. इवन बांग्लादेश वाला मैच यार, वो भी इतना मतलब कि बॉलिंग तो उसके अच्छी थी, द वे दे बैटेड वाज पैथेटिक. मतलब कि बाबर एंड रिजवान, वो तो शुक्र है कि एंड में बांग्लादेश इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ टीम which crumbles under the pressure. वो आपसे भी बड़े मतलब कि वो चोकर्स वगैरह हैं, तो वो इसलिए वो हार गई थी. और साउथ अफ्रीका का तो अब अल्टीमेट मेरे ख्याल से कोई बॉटल जॉब आप उसको कह सकते हो. वरना तो पाकिस्तान का तो मतलब कि कोई आपने भी यही कहा था ना कि there is zero chance of Pakistan making it out of the tournament, out of the Super 12 until the miracle happened at Adelaide. तो मेरे ख्याल से अगर वो सारा तो कर रहे हैं, इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ कि C is a good is a very क्या कहते हैं.
No, you made your argument. You've argued it well. So I give you credit for that. You made a good argument. Last thoughts for let's put a bow on this 2022 ICC T20 World Cup. Any last thoughts from each of you?
I think we won't ever see Babar and Rizwan open again together in T20 cricket.
Bold prediction. Yang?
I think it was probably the best. No, it was the best ICC T20 World Cup ever. Probably the best ICC event. और मेरे ख्याल से परमीत जो कह रहा है तो अच्छी बात ही कर रहा है, बट आई थिंक इट्स अ रियली विशफुल थिंकिंग, क्योंकि अभी भी आप लोगों ने, आपको पता नहीं है रिएक्शन देखे लोगों का, वो कह रहे हैं कि सेमीफाइनल में जो इनिंग्स खेली थी उसका क्या। तो आप अगर वो ऐसे ही लोग बातें कर रहे हैं तो मुझे तो नहीं लग रहा, मुझे तो लग रहा है कि पाकिस्तान इज प्लेइंग आफ्टर, पता नहीं इन मे आफ्टर दिस, तो मुझे तो लग रहा है तब तक लोगों को भूल भी जाएगा कि इन्होंने क्या कांड किया। इन्होंने बाद में एक दो क्या कहते हैं वो करके इन्होंने ये इनिंग्स वगैरह दिखा के उन्होंने कहना है देखो जी बाबर आजम के अंडर तो हम लोग फाइनल ऑस्ट्रेलिया में पहुंचे थे और रिजवान ने तो ये किया था। फिर हो सकता है किसी एक और मैच में भी, मेरे ख्याल से रिजवान ने किसी मैच में 50 की है, किसी और मैच में भी, लेकिन पता नहीं इसने की थी।
नेदरलैंड्स को 49 मारा था।
तो वही उन्होंने कहना वो देखो उसने 49 किया था, फिर वो
So that's why
सेमीफाइनल।
we have to disseminate this podcast far and wide to change hearts and minds, right?
तो अब वो तो अब हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं, बाकी अब लोगों की अपनी मर्जी है, वो जो अगर उनको लगता है कि देयर इज नथिंग रॉन्ग विद द टीम तो फिर सही है यार। अब हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, कोई कोई क्या कहते हैं, कोई आई डोंट थिंक वी कैन डू मच अबाउट इट इफ like people can believe whatever they want to believe. तो अब ये इसके ऊपर मैं I don't think I
Cani, thank you guys. And so this wraps up our coverage for the ICC T20 World Cup. We plan to have our next episode as a preview for the upcoming FIFA World Cup happening in 6 days' time, as amazing as that sounds. So please join us for that.
Thank you.
thank you.
And special thank you for to Cani for joining us and sharing his thoughts as well.